Good morning and welcome to Mindful Trinity viewers. Welcome to our second season of our Mindful Trinity podcast with your host Vaishnavi Charan. So this morning, we are very fortunate to be joined by a very amazing person. He actually wears so many caps. He's a little brother to me. He's a friend, and I watched him grow in front of me over the years. Our guest for today is from Johannesburg in South Africa. He is a postgraduate student in anthropology at the University of Pretoria. His interests involve a multitude of activities such as reading, singing, art, makeup, and dance. He is currently training in Indian classical dance at Darpan Dance Studios. He is also an advocate for the LGBTQ community. So welcome, Arvash Sewpaul.
Thank you so much, Vaishnavi Charan, for having me on Mindful Trinity. It's such an honor to be a part of this wonderful project and podcast series. It's really powerful work. I'm so grateful.
And I'm so grateful for you for being here and actually just agreeing to being on here and also being patient with me. Tell us more about Arvash. Let our viewers get to know you better.
So this is a really sweet question because, like you said, I wear so many caps. And I think everybody wears so many caps. But in my life, being a son, a brother, a cousin, a friend, best friend, acquaintance, student, dancer, artist, there's so many aspects to it. And particularly in my case, one of the points you mentioned is I am an advocate for the LGBTQIA+ community. And personally, it's because I identify as a non-binary individual. So Arvash has been someone who's constantly growing, transforming, and learning. I've grown up in Johannesburg, and I've been in various sort of difficult situations growing up. It wasn't an easy childhood, be it financial issues, be it school, the stresses of school, the stresses of being a queer Indian individual in today's time. All these different perspectives brought me to a position where I am now very comfortable and very open, and I advocate for various issues that I find personal to me and that I find need sort of a social perspective or social attention to it, a public lens to such paradigms and issues. So yeah, Arvash is many things, and of them he is growing.
Awesome. You mentioned something, LGBTQ plus. I never mentioned that. So maybe tell me more about that because I'm very curious now.
So you aren't incorrect in saying the LGBTQ community. The reason I say the LGBTQIA+ is because that plus represents the other sort of identities, gender expressions, and sexualities that I won't mention, that I hadn't mentioned in the first part. So LGBTQIA+ or LGBTQ, these letters stand for a specific orientation, a specific gender identity. And so, it's a bit long to say the LGBTQIAAP community. It's a bit of a mouthful. So in turn, most people shorten it to the LGBTQ+ community. So that plus just represents the other identities that LGBTQIA+ stands for. It stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, transsexual, queer, intersex, asexual, pansexual, these sort of identities. So yeah, I just want to clear that.
It's quite a big community then, hey? So, okay, I know you're very passionate about this and you're also an advocate for this movement. How long has this movement been in existence? Because only now I'm getting to know about it. And I think a lot of our viewers as well are getting to know about it more now than ever before.
This social movement, the queer activist space or the LGBTQ activist space, has actually been around, if we look in the South African context, since the 1980s. with the first Johannesburg Tea Party happening in the 1980s. And from there, various social sort of events have been happening under this activist space, such as pride marches, which started in the 1990s under Simon Colley. And then from there, it's been in existence in South Africa ever since. So roughly the last 40 to 50 years, there has been queer activists in South Africa, queer activism happening in South Africa. And particularly recently, the sort of rise in the platform and individuals in these spaces is due to us having a democratic sort of right to freedom of expression. Also, many of these individuals start to understand the importance of being true to themselves, not hiding. Also, a lot of them don't have the energy to do it. You know, it takes a lot to sort of put up a facade. It takes a lot to yourself. So many of these individuals and many youth have grown up with these principles of freedom and expression and democracy. And so these are now translating into this particular area where they're saying quite loud and boldly that this is who we are. We are people a part of the LGBT community. We are feminists. We are environmentalists. There's so many different caps that they're starting to wear, like you said. So yeah, this is the recent upsurge in LGBTQ individuals and representation.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for that clarity or clarification, I would say. Is there anyone or anything that influenced your decision in being involved in this sort of work or part of this movement as an advocate?
Actually, I wouldn't say there was a particular influence. It was more so my experiences. Growing up in a high school in South Africa, already trying to deal with being Indian, you know, trying to deal with my identity, my history, and how that sort of translates into my existence now. You know, I come from a very spiritual background and a very Indian background. I truly appreciate my heritage and my roots, but to sort of balance that with my South African identity and nationality proved tricky throughout high school. And for a lot of that, I was bullied. And then to add on to that, a lot of the times, many of the boys, in order to ridicule me or to put me down, would refer to me as gay or other slurs associated with the LGBTQI+ community. And in that process, I realized that no person, and especially no child, should go through these experiences. No child should feel that they're different or less than any other person who happens to be straight just because of their identity or gender expression. So a lot of my high school being bullied, being mocked, made fun of, ridiculed, led to me sort of becoming more prominent in the LGBT activist space because I solely didn't want some other child, some other individual to go through what I went through. You know, a lot of that bullying had placed a huge burden, if you can say, a huge pressure on my mental health. It's led me to great extents of depression, anxiety, some of which even I refused to accept for a long period of time. So, you know, those sort of damages is just reflecting on that alone inspired me to be more active in the space and say that no child should go through this. No individual should go through what I went through.
Thank you so much. And I totally agree with you, especially in the school space. I think bullying is increasing over the years. I know when I was in school, it was there. When my parents were in school, I'm sure it was also there. What advice can you give for educators to, you know, take control of the situation and try to help the learners? Because we want to create a much more healthier environment for children to grasp the knowledge, because I mean, being stressed as adults is so difficult. Imagine what children are going through in that situation.
You know, to educators, and I've been so grateful, I had two wonderful educators in my space who really gave me an immense amount of support through high school. But to to the educators in general, it's in the name. Your title, your job title literally denotes the way you can help any person, and that's educating them. A lot of the time, bullies pick on you out of ignorance because they don't understand you. They don't see you and your experiences as valid as human. So to any educator who's dealing with this sort of situation, I would strongly suggest, firstly, educating the bully on those experiences, making them see that the child that they're picking on is just as much a human as them. And, we all know the notion that often or not, bullies come from bad experiences, or they come from spaces where they're not receiving that sort of love and attention, and they take it up negatively. The sort of channeling of emotions needs to be done in a more, this is where educators can really play a bigger influence and role in that child's life, the bully, as well as the child that's being bullied, but to help that child understand how to channel their emotions, how to deal with their emotions is it's a really underrated step, but it's so important, because once you learn how to do that, growing up, being an adult, it changes the whole perspective of the way you see life. Because once you're able to deal with emotions that are affecting you negatively, not just when it's in school or in family, but in all other aspects, work, socialization, so all sorts of other aspects, dealing with your emotions is very important. And having that sort of honest conversation with yourself or with someone else who can help you is very important. So educators have the ability to provide a safe space for students to share and open up and speak to them, as well as being a medium for these students to negative energy, negativity, negative experience and emotions in a constructive way, thus not harming another child and their mental health and their educational journey.
Thank you so much for that. And you said it so beautifully as well, because when you take the role of anything in life, I mean, even educator, because you got a role to fulfill. And I always say we all have a purpose in life. Some of us have the purpose of being a teacher and being there for the kids. Whether you are actually in the school space or any other fraternity, but you got a purpose to fulfill, and you need to be there for the people that you are serving or the souls that you are serving. What was the most pivotal point in your journey? Because something tells me it actually led to dance, but maybe tell us more about the pivotal, something that was pivotal in your life and your journey with dance.
So my journey with dance has been very sweet. What got me to dance actually was a bit scarier for me. So my sister, when she was 4, she had started dancing and she started learning Kathak. And I would see her come back from the lessons every Saturday and she'd be so happy and just so in bliss. That's what she was, in bliss, as this young 4-year-old. And I sort of envied that innocence, that happiness, that complete safe space that she had at such a young age and I was in grade 9 at the time. And that year I was being bullied. My mental health was completely bad. I had absolutely no self-confidence whatsoever. And this was particularly interesting for me because outside of school, I was doing well. In our spiritual community at the time, I was known. I had the confidence to be in the forefront. I would do whatever made me happy outside of that space. But school was so damaging to me that it led me to a point where suicide seemed appealing. And after speaking to my counselor at the time, she was like, no, you can't be doing these things. You can't think like this. It's too damaging. And she sort of put this thought into my head, what would happen to those who care about you if you had to do this? And so after meditating on this dance that my sister had been going to for a year, finally after a year, I remember walking into my dance teacher's classroom and I stood in the back because there was only girls in the class. And now this further was intimidating to me. So I walked up to her very meekly and I was like, Namaste, Didi. could I kindly learn dance from you? And she was more than happy to have me in her space. And she welcomed me with such positivity. And in that space, I've come to realize it allowed me to be with no hesitations, with no restrictions, with no ideal of what I should be or who I should be. It allowed me to just be. I was her student who was learning from her. And I sort of saw my sister's happiness in me for the first time in a very long time. I started looking forward to my classes. I started looking forward to that Saturday morning where I got to go and dance, where I didn't have anyone picking on me, when I didn't have anyone telling me, Arvash, you need to be this way, or you need to do this, or it was just me in that space without any influence from outside. It was a safe space. So suicide, mental health, bullying, all of those things happening in grade 9 pushed me to find a safe space for me to be. At the time, you would also know Vaishnavi, I was coming to temple, I was in that spiritual community. And as much as it was so empowering to be in that space, for me, there was a little bit disjoint in my experiences because I was much younger. You know, a lot of my time was still being in school, 5 days, 7, 8 hours, 9 hours even. You know, it was still intimidating. And a lot of the time, you know, we were so caught up in spiritual activities that very rarely did I have the opportunity to really speak or share what I was going through. And that was, you know, on me as well, because I was too scared to open up about what I was going through at the time. So dance became that safe space where I could express myself and my emotions through my body in a safe space.
Wow, absolutely beautiful. And I'm so glad that you actually found that safe space. Not many people are as fortunate as you. So for someone that is actually going through what you were going through, because now you're actually a new person, you reinvented yourself through your circumstances. Yes. Yeah. So it just seems like you redirected your energy and you focused on something that made you more happy, and it brought out the bliss, because bliss is actually found within. Yes. So for someone that is actually going through what you used to go through, what advice do you have for them? Can you maybe recommend tools that you used other than dance? Because I mean, dance is also a tool. What other tools did you use to help you?
The first thing I'd like to say, though, to someone who's going through what I've went through, you need to sit down before anything else, and you need to honestly ask yourself, what do you feel inside? Are you happy with how you feel inside? Because if the answer to any of those questions is no, or something negative, then you need to the impetus is on you, have that power and that ability to change. When I was in grade 9, I was very young. I didn't know much about tools. And only now, sort of reflecting back, I see, oh, I was doing that. Oh, I was using this as a means to protect myself. So the first thing is having that open and honest conversation with yourselves. Because I'll be honest, many people hold on to their trauma as their identity. And if you're doing that, and if it's working for you and it's acting as your way of being and surviving, then that's good. But know that that's not sustainable. And that's what I've understood. I cannot hold on to my trauma because come outside of high school, I'm struggling to be myself. So be open, be honest with yourself. And if you're struggling with that conversation personally, then start to confide in someone who you know has your best interests at heart. A lot of those people, it can be their parents, it can be siblings, it can be best friends or people that you know for a long time, people that care for you. And if you can't have that conversation with yourself, ask them to come in. Share with them what you're going through. They may not be able to give you mental health advice. They may not be able to give you any sort of guidance, you know, in this journey, but their support will act as a tool for you to get the help you need. When you realize that there are people that care for you, because any person in the space, any person that you come across, guaranteed there's someone that cares for them. Guaranteed there's someone that wants what's best for them. It may be any individual, someone you may not like at school or at work, but guaranteed that there is someone who wants them here. You may not want them, but someone does. And so that helps, knowing that there is someone who wants you here. That really changes your perspective in making yourself whole, better, making yourself happier, positive. So that's number one, reach out to those that care for you. And then from there, you can find different ways of expressing and channeling emotions. And this can be both negative and positive. Sometimes you're so happy that you need to dance, or you need to draw, or you need to journal, because that emotion is so overwhelming. And this brings me to my second point. A lot of the times, I've been told I'm unemotional, and that's because my experiences have led me to a point where showing emotion, I consider a sign of weakness. So even negative emotions, I would not show. And on top of that, positive emotions. I struggle with both, even up until now, at this point, I still struggle showing both good and bad emotions. So really start learning how to express those emotions. This could be through simple practices, such as accounting for something good and bad that went through your day, reflections. I've mentioned dance, art, and journaling. These things have helped me. But aside from that, it could also be socializing. It could be speaking to friends. It could be doing various studies or courses, or educating yourself on practices. It could be through yoga. It could be through reading. There's many practices for you to sort of reflect what's inside. And the first and foremost is just to be open and be honest on where you are. And you don't need to share this with everybody. You can keep it to yourself if you wish, but just be honest and say, I'm going through this. This is how I feel. And therefore, I know how to go forward. Or if I need help, I know who to reach out. There's plenty of resources on mental health, on anxiety, on depression that you can Google, and you'll find stuff. You'll find people that are there and want to help you.
Thank you so much for the beautiful share, Arvash. And they can also listen to Mindful Trinity's podcast. There's lots of amazing people that's coming here and they're sharing. So it brings me to my next question regarding your experiences. Now that you actually look back and you reflect on everything that happened, or actually brought you to where you are right now and molded you into the person that you are right now as well. What are your learnings from that experience? Or did you learn anything from the people that treated you bad? Because what I always say, whenever someone treats us bad, it's not about us, it's about them. They are going through something and they need to actually make that acknowledgement and make that, that change in their lives. So when you reflect back, what did you learn from that whole experience?
This question is so multi-layered. The first thing that I learned is that our community is so full of hate, of trauma, of negativity. And a lot of the times this is passed down. It's trauma that is passed down. We speak of generational trauma. I'll speak from my experiences, especially with the Indian community. They don't know how to speak openly and honestly without any subconscious or underlying passive aggressiveness. So I realized that communication is a huge struggle within our community. And then comes my experience in high school, where differences are isolated. if you're different, you belong in a different space. We don't get along. Now, I'm an Indian boy in Johannesburg who took Zulu, very unheard of, very unheard of. Honestly, most of the Indian students would take Afrikaans because their parents took it. It was the language that they needed to know in order for them to be in apartheid. It was that sort of mentality. So to speak Zulu was not really something that an Indian parent would encourage their student to, or their child to learn. So anyway, I took it. And that made me the only Indian in a class of 40 students. And it made me realize that a lot of the times we isolate ourselves from people who are different to us, and we don't get to see another side. We don't get to see other experiences. We don't get to see other people. And this made me realize that my upbringing is very different to the person who was sitting next to me in my Zulu class, to the girl, to the boy, to the teacher, very different. And so when I reflect back, I realized that communication was such a big thing because we didn't read, we didn't speak or engage with people who were different to us. We didn't realize that our experiences is not the only experience. Our upbringing, our journey is not the only experience or journey that there is. And not everybody shares the same journey as me. So when I reflect back, I definitely see that as a very big point. Another thing I see is a level of ignorance. Ignorance is bliss, that saying. A lot of people are happy being ignorant. A lot of people don't wish to engage in wholesome or transformational dialogues. They're happy with the way they are. They're happy with being complacent, with being angry, with being in a toxic space, because that's all they've ever known. There's nothing else to it. They've grown up in a household that anger was on the tip of a wooden spoon, a belt. They grew up in these spaces where any small mistake, human mistake, they received the harshest of punishments. They were given beatings, they were punished, they were sent to bed without food, there's so many, the list goes on. We know these experiences. So for them as adults, as grown-ups who have children, that's all they know to show. I recently did, well, not recently, last year I did a Instagram live where I spoke about toxic masculinity. And this is important because a lot of the time, men and boys grow up seeing anger as a form of love. They don't know what it means to hug their father, hug their brother. They don't know what it means to have an open conversation and say, Dad, I'm not feeling this way. I think, I'm going through something. They don't know how to have these conversations. And in turn, this is what they deem as a loving relationship with their child. And now that child grows up seeing love as anger, seeing love expressed through abuse and all sorts of abuse, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. And that's just because many people don't want to be a positive space. They fear positivity. This is an important thing. They do fear it. They see emotions as weakness, and they see honest conversations as feminine or too girly, or, these are things that we see in our spaces.
Yeah, that's true. It's the conditioning. So we need to actually unlearn everything that was already taught to us and relearn something new, and basically just being in that space of learning, but also being more conscious of what you're learning. So thank you so much for that beautiful share. Another beautiful share. I always say when my speakers or any of my guests are sharing knowledge, they're actually sharing gems. And a lot of the Americans say we are sharing nuggets. You actually gave so much of information that a lot of us actually tend to brush it under the carpet. And I want to make a very safe space on this platform where we're using it to the best of our ability for sharing sharing knowledge and also helping people for whatever they're going through. And you mentioned something about all of the experience that you actually went through thus far. What can we do to change as a community, as a society at large? What can we do differently?
Well, platforms like this, they're instruments of change. Platforms such as Mindful Trinity are definitely instruments that can really change a community's mindset. It takes one person in a family to experience struggles with mental health for their entire family to start realizing that this is no joke. And I'm not talking about those who use mental health as a card to get out of doing things or being a productive human being. I'm talking about those individuals that go through severe anxiety, depression, mental health. And I say severe in contrast to the sort of facade. So all anxiety, mental health, and depression situations are severe to me. No matter if it's one aspect or it's a weekly thing or it's a yearly thing for you, if you have any hint, it's severe because it's not a joke. And those who use it as a facade and use it as an excuse actually worsen the situation for those that experience this in a serious manner. So the first thing is when an individual, one person has to go through it, those around them start seeing that this is a reality, that this person is genuinely going through something I may not be able to relate, but I can sympathize and empathize with. Because at the end of the day, no person wants anything bad for another. And those who do, we all know, do belong in a special place.
I think all of us go through some sort of mental challenge at some point in our lives. And I always say as well that our challenges should not just make us despondent. It should basically strengthen us. We should use it as our stepping blocks to reach our goal, because we all have goals in life. These individuals that actually come in our way, they're just blocks that's stopping us to reach where we're going. And it's okay. That's why I always say we also should be learning from them, because they are so, what is the word that I'm looking for? They are actually so scared of us because they see something in us that they're actually so scared to take the step to even do it. So I'm very proud of you to actually do what you're doing and overcoming all of those challenges to be where you are right now, being here to also share and educate a number of people, a community, a society. And like you said, one step at a time, it takes one person to make that change. And I'm so grateful as well to be in the space right now, whereby there are so many change makers making a change in this world. And that's amazing, because when all of us actually come together, we're changing the vibrancy or the vibration of this world. And we need that. We need more positivity. Negativity will actually go away if all of us come together and do what we are doing. So yeah.
I agree. I agree. And you made so many beautiful points, truly. And the last thing I just like to add to this, the sort of community of change, is calling out toxic behavior. If you see someone being treated badly, poorly, and if you see that sort of treatment happening to you, we've all grown up with this sort of mindset that we shouldn't backchat people older than us. And any sort of response to someone older is considered unruly or bad behavior. And a lot of children across different upbringings experience this particular point. And for me, there is a way to do it respectfully. But to any person, older, younger, thinner, fatter, lighter, darker, green, blue, if they're treating you negatively, don't tolerate it, because that is the precedent you're setting for y'all's relationship. That person's going to come back and treat you the same way until you say, no, this is my boundary. This is where you need to respect me, and I won't allow you to treat me that way. So set your boundaries. It's very, very important to set boundaries. If I tell you that this is where you stop, this is where you stop.
So in life, our circumstances can either make us bitter or better. So I'm actually very glad that it actually made you a better person. Not that you weren't better before, but you used your experiences to, allow you to evolve. The whole world is evolving. And if we actually stay stagnant, we're going to actually miss the bus. We actually going to be missing our chance for making a change. And yeah, that's what we are doing right now. How can we accept circumstances that we cannot change?
So I've sort of been in and out a spiritual space for the last 10 years. And in the last 4 years, I've gotten a little bit more serious with Vedic philosophy. And in this, I've come to realize that a lot of things are out of my control. A lot of my experiences were out of my control. And a big part of me wanted to control it. A big part of me wanted to say, no, I alone, singularly, have the ability to change this situation, both positive and negative. And this, I realized, is an aspect of my ego. And we've all learned, and throughout various sort of religious spaces, we've all learned that pride and ego and greed and lust are not the greatest of qualities to have in a saintly person. And for me, just to strive towards that saintliness, that goodness, that was what I kept in the center of my experience, my reflection and experiences. How would a positive person respond? And a lot of the times I would say, okay, I need to accept that this is the situation. I don't have very much control, but I can control how I react. And then I take a step back and I reflect. If I react in a negative manner, what would happen? If in a situation where I'm getting bullied, if I respond and punch this person, what would happen? I'd end up in the principal's office. I'd end up getting suspended. This person who has this known reputation, he'll probably go through the same, but he won't feel indifferent. He'll come back and do the same thing. That situation will come back if I respond this way. But if I step back and say, no, I don't want to engage with this person, or I don't want to engage in this situation. I want to choose a way that would allow the situation not to occur again. I know it's a very mature sort of response, but
very strong.
Yeah,
do that.
Yeah, but I unfortunately have never been in a situation. Well, I've grown up in situations that only forced me to look at it in these ways.
Well, that's good.
Because if I had to fight with someone, what would happen? If I had to fight with people, what would happen? We'd all be going and fighting each other,
Yeah, there's nothing good going to come out of it anyway.
Exactly. So it's a moment reflection when facing a situation that can really change the outcome. You don't have to control the entire situation, but you control how you react to that situation. I've come to a point in my life now, and as you can see, I'm very expressive with the way I present myself. I wear big earrings. I wear makeup. I'm non-binary, so I don't feel like I should dress up entirely in male clothes as department stores put them. So when I go out to a temple, to a bar, or to a club, to a restaurant, to family, to friends, I'm dressed in a way that's not conventional for a male. And so I've come to a point where people find it in them to tell me this, to be like, you're a boy, why are you wearing makeup? Some people aggressively, some people passively aggressive, many sorts of people. And I've come to a point where I realize if I respond to them negatively, then they're going to hate the next person they come across who's in my position. And maybe that person's not so strong to hold their ground. But if I sort of ignore them also, it's going to be like, I think too good of myself, which I don't. I'm also struggling with my identity. I'm also struggling with, the response society gives me for my identity. So I take a step back and be like, but do you understand that it's not easy for me to be in the space as I am? When you ask them a question and you turn it around and have that conversation with them, it changes the dynamic.
Wow.
This person will still do it. This person will still, to the next person who may be very different to them. Oh, why you like this? Or, pass a comment. If you make them aware, and this is to the same point that I made earlier, you asked about educators and their role in terms of schools and students. The same thing comes here. It's just about educating that person. You can change a situation. I've been in positions where it could have become hostile, volatile, violent, just because I was in a space. I never say anything, never do anything, just because I was there. People were uncomfortable. I couldn't control that. Many people will say, don't wear makeup and don't go outside, but is that being true to myself?
And you cannot be in a bubble for the rest of your life. But it's so good that you're actually facing this head on. A lot of people, they're in denial, they run away from the problems, whatever it may be. There are so many different situations people may find themselves in. And a lot of philosophers, especially in Vedic life, they actually say that this world is a battlefield and we are fighting a battle every day. Some battles you would not be able to see with the naked eye. That's why we have to practice more kindness with
100%.
ourselves and kindness towards everyone else. And everything shouldn't be revolving around us. We are not the sun,
Yes, I love that.
So, okay, I know you do a lot of Instagram Live, and I know you're also busy with your studies. When are you going to start with your next series, and how can our audience get in touch with you if they want to actually get you on their podcast, or they want to follow you on whichever platforms? Tell us more about that.
So I've started the Queer Family series in May this year, and it continued up until the first week of September. The reason September and October have been a bit quiet for me is those series, a lot of things came up personally for me. And so apart from studies, I also needed some time to just process what I was sharing. It's not easy being in these spaces as a presenter, because a lot of the time your energy and your experiences come to the forefront. A lot of people got to know me and things about me that they didn't know before. And they started to see my experiences as my identity, which is a little bit scary. I don't believe that my experiences are my identity. I think they make part of it. So I just needed some time to process. And so I took a step back and I was like, okay, September, October, let me finish off this degree. Let me, get out of this space, which is already so stressful. Studying during a pandemic is not easy. So I said to myself, fine, come the first week of November, I'm going to get back into my Instagram lives. I am going to start again with my episodes on the queer family. So right now I have the Queer Family, which is a series on queer individuals, but also the journeys of those around them. A lot of the times within my space, queer activists believe that their experiences hold power over others, and they tend to ignore the experiences of their mothers, fathers, brothers, cousins, friends. And it's important to hear those experiences. We're all growing. We all have to deal with the sort of change. It's not just one person. So this is the Queer Family series, and I'm going to be launching a new project next year, but that will be launched on my social media accounts. For those who like to get a hold of me, DM me. If you need any sort of access, Instagram is the best platform. Instagram has all my details, so you can always pop me a message on Instagram. I'll be more than happy to respond, and I'd probably respond immediately. So it's one of those things. But Instagram, Facebook, as well as YouTube, I have access to those platforms. You're more than welcome. And if not, you can always get my number via Mindful Trinity. I have no issues with that. And I am an open book, and I welcome any sort of conversation on experiences, transformation, growth, as well as LGBTQI+ community and mental health.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much for that. Okay, I'm going to play a little game. This is you actually my inaugural guest, my first guest in my second season. I'm grateful for that. Okay, so give me one word that describes you.
Eclectic.
Okay, and one word that describes how you want to feel today.
Soothing.
Okay, what is your anchor word for today? Something that grounds you.
Repeat that again, sorry.
Your anchor word, I just want one word that describes how you want to feel. Your anchor word is something that grounds you. So give me just one word.
Positivity.
Lovely. Okay, so now, do you have any parting thoughts to share with our audience? We had such a beautiful conversation. A lot of gems were shared, and we got to know Arvash Sewpaul. I think the best. I actually got to know him a lot as well. I mean, he grew up in front of me over the years, and now he's a new person.
Parting thoughts, I would tell all those listening to stay close to Mindful Trinity. It's a wonderful platform. It's doing great work, so do stay close to it. And like I said earlier, there's always someone who cares. And if you can't find that person, come to me, because I will help you find that person. I will be that person. But always know you're not alone. A lot of the times, I've grown up knowing that association is very important, and those you keep around you is very important. So know that this is not an isolated journey. You have people that want to be a part of it. You're not alone.
Absolutely, absolutely beautiful, Arvash. I'm so grateful that you came here today and you were so open, so transparent with us. And I'm sure whoever's going to be listening to this podcast, they are going to appreciate it as much as I appreciate it and appreciate you. And looking forward to seeing more of you in your journey, and all the best in your future endeavors. Lots of love.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you for having me, for allowing me the space to share and have this open conversation. I'm so grateful to you and the amazing work you're doing. You're really, really inspiring to me as a content creator, as an influencer, as a big sister. And I've also gotten to learn so much about you in the last few Instagram and even LinkedIn and all these spaces that you're starting to grow in. I really come to appreciate your presence, and I look forward to actually seeing your posts. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this journey, your journey. And I'm so, so grateful to you.
Thank you so much. So thank you to my wonderful audience, my beautiful Mindful Trinity viewers, which are family right now. Thank you for joining us in my first podcast for the new season. And I'm grateful to all of you for being a part of this journey as well. And look forward to our next guest. I still need to confirm them, but stay tuned. Follow us on all the different social platforms. I will share the links with you. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on Google, YouTube. We're on so many different platforms. So if you even search for Mindful Trinity, you'll find us there. Thanks so much and lots of love.